Hello and welcome to
Hey, we like your pod.
And we're going to tell you why.
So, quick note to all of our listeners. Tonight's episode is dedicated to our friend Niebles, who we just learned has passed away suddenly. We'll talk more about him at the end, but he was a beloved member of the Packers Twitter community and is very much going to be missed. So, more about him later. But with that said, let's go on with the show.
Well, hi, it's Dawn here, and thank you for that, Matt, so much. It's a very difficult thing to even express, isn't it?
Yes.
It's Dawn here, and we're trusted, but with my trusted partner, Matt, of course, and our very special guest tonight is Wendi Hansen. We're so excited to have you.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to our podcast, Wendi. It's so nice to meet you. We had a few minutes ahead of the show to chat. So how was your week? What's the latest? How's the fam? How are the wedding plans going?
Oh gosh. It's been a whirlwind of the last couple of weeks, just a roller coaster of emotions. But it's been going really, really good. I've got to say, I've never cried so many happy tears in my life than I have probably in the last 12 days or so. Just really, really grateful. And kind of looking ahead to what's next. A lot of planning will happen, but right now we're just kind of soaking it all in and enjoying it. And it's been great. It's been really great.
Wendy, I'm so happy to have this chance to say to your face virtually, like, congratulations on the engagement. That's such great news.
Thank you. Yeah.
So happy for you.
Thank you.
It's been a good week over here in Cincinnati. The weather's been kind of nice, and just getting really into orientation season for the summer. Like, it's really like in full blast now, which is a fun part. It is full blast is a good way of putting it, because it's like drinking from the fire hose in a lot of ways. But it's a good part of the year, so I'm really happy with that. And the kids started like summer school, so they're excited about that. So things are going well over in here. How about for you, Dawn?
Well, things are a little chaotic as always in my life. I've got a broken finger. It's splinted with two other fingers, broken two places. And I managed to step on my own finger, which is kind of an improbable thing, I know. And of course, it did involve the cat. I was reaching under the couch for some cat toy. I'm super flexible, and I was just like reaching. And so when I stepped backward in my kind of lunge position, I literally just smashed my own pinky. And I heard it crush, and because I have concrete floors, I know, sorry.
Oh gosh.
I was like, in such disbelief, how do you step on your own finger? It's
that takes skill. That takes
skill,
Don.
Yeah, a lot of flexibility.
That's amazing.
The saga continues with Pepe LaFleur and Tosh. Tosh has not been doing well. She's had 2 hospital visits since the last podcast, so we've got some issues over here. So if you see me my head pop up and down, that's because I'm taking care of a pretty sick kitty. So yeah, it's not been the greatest week. And then that news about we got today was kind of sad too. So we're just hoping that tonight we'll have some lighthearted discussion, get to know Wendi a little bit, which we've been dying to do.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, maybe just kind of cleanse the timeline, as they say, a little bit with our podcast. So hopefully everyone will enjoy that. So Wendi, we have so much to talk to you about. And I'm super excited because there's only 10 more weeks until the preseason starts. And so tell us what else is going on besides your exciting whirlwind engagement, which I want to know more about.
Yeah. Tell us the story about how he proposed, actually, if you don't mind me throwing that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a little belated birthday trip up to Milwaukee planned. It was a big whole, Brewers weekend. And so we had this plan for a couple months. And the day before the first game, so it was a Saturday, we had some time to kill. So we grabbed breakfast. We went to the lakefront by the Milwaukee Art Museum, and we just walked around for a little bit. And it was kind of like overcast, but it was beautiful. I mean, it was the perfect day. But Mike said he was a little chilly, which I found to be a little strange because he's always like a human heater. So he went back to the car and grabbed his jacket. And I hung out on one of the benches and just kind of enjoyed the views. And when he got back, he said that he had one more birthday gift for me, a Brewers birthday gift. And so obviously I was very excited. And he pulls out a jersey. And the first thing that I saw was like the front of the jersey. So I was like, oh, this is cool. Like a new jersey. Awesome. I can wear it tonight. And I turned it around and it had his last name on it. And I was like, I didn't put two and two together. So of course I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like it has your name on it. How neat. And he's like, well, now it'll be your name too. And then he popped the ring out and I lost consciousness. I didn't remember anything after that point. But it was amazing. It was so perfect. It was so us, so me. Yeah, it was great.
From all we've seen on Twitter, from the way you talk about him, since as long as I've known you on Twitter, he seems like a really good dude. So
yeah,
really happy about this for you.
I think so.
For both of you.
Thank you.
I love that. And I love that area. I always visit the Milwaukee Art almost every year that I visit with my mother. I bring her up to the museum because we're art lovers.
It's such a cool space. Yeah.
When you said you went up, are you from south of Milwaukee?
So actually, I grew up in Wausau, and then I lived in Milwaukee for about 8 years. I'm actually living in Colorado now. So I've been out here for, 9 years. So yeah, Mike and I actually met in Colorado, but I go back quite often. Milwaukee is just no bias at all in this, but it's one of the greatest cities, I think.
It's a fun city.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a fun city.
Yeah.
Well, how did you end up in Colorado?
My mom grew up in Arvada, which is right outside of Denver. So growing up, we'd make the trip as a family to visit all of my grandparents and aunts and uncles. And I always told myself that one day I would live out here. And I had just finished grad school up at UW Milwaukee and didn't have a job. So I was like, you know what? Like, this is the perfect opportunity to try it out. And it was kind of like a spur of the moment thing. I remember I was sitting on the couch with my sister and we were watching The Office. And I turned to her and I was like, Lindsay, I'm moving to Colorado. And she's like, oh, wow. She's like, that's great. And I was like, no, tomorrow. And she's like, what? And I did. I packed up my little VW bug and I drove out to Colorado and I gave myself 3 months to find a job and to see if I liked it. And the rest is history.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love how bold that is. Yeah, just going for it. Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm. The scariest / best thing I think I've ever done.
I love that. When I came out to California, I wasn't planning to come here. It was a job offer, and no one even knew I was interviewing. I was vacationing out here, and a friend had a conference, and I kind of tagged along. And I flew back, and I was like, "Hey," I thought about it on the plane, and I said yes, and came home and told everybody, well, I'm leaving for across the country. Oh. So it was kind of similar. There wasn't a whole lot of, I just went. Like I was packed up in a week and gone. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to cut the cord, right?
Right. Just go for it. Yeah.
I love that. And where in Colorado? Are you Denver?
I lived in Denver for 7 years, but I'm down in Colorado Springs right now.
Oh, nice. That's a beautiful
area. It is. Yeah, it's a little slower pace. Pikes Peak is literally in our backyard. So it's really nice.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, so Wendi, we always start with our guests with reading your Twitto reading.
Oh gosh.
So we'll have questions. I've got a couple right away. Wendi Hansen at WendyLuhu3. Just a Forever Brewers at Packers. Nerd getting lost in the Colorado mountains. That sounds glorious. Pretty pictures here. Yes, I love your photography. I love that you share.
Thank you.
And so you went from Milwaukee to Denver, and you also have a blog. This that and the other thing at wordpress.com or .wordpress.com. So questions. I have so
Hit me
many.
with it.
First of all, okay, are you more of a baseball fan or a football fan?
That's a great question. You can probably see from the background. I'm a diehard Brewers fan. I kind of a little bit am breaking the mold in terms of Wisconsin sports fandom, and that I lean more, definitely more towards the Brewers, towards baseball. I am a huge Packers fan as well, but I think there's just something about baseball that really kind of just sets, my soul just on fire in a way that makes me very, very happy. My dad played in college. My grandpa, I grew up with him taking me to games at County Stadium. So a lot of things are involved in that make it just really, really special. But of course, I gotta cheer on the Packers. My sister actually, she manages the social media for Acme Packing. I used to manage that, and I kind of passed the baton on to her. So it's been fun, still hanging out with that crew. They're just a bunch of knowledgeable, passionate Packers fans. And it's always cool to get their takes and, kind of be a part of that community as well.
And your sister's kind of floating around in Twitter as well, right?
She is.
The day that I learned that you two are sisters, I'm trying to remember who your sister is now. But when I learned, I was like, oh, that's so cool. Who's your
Lindsay Ray.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I forgot about that too.
Yeah.
I should know these things. That's great. I love that. Okay, so you have a blog, right? And you take gorgeous photos. And so I'm wondering, you share your photos on your blog as well as wherever you are. Twitter, yeah. So is writing for your blog and sharing your gorgeous photos, is that therapeutic for you, or what's your motivation behind blogging? Your blog is really good.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I actually started it as just kind of a form of therapy for me, to kind of get my thoughts out. I have always found that, in writing or, in any sort of written word format, it just kind of helps take that heavy weight off of my heart and, my head, and kind of clear up some of that messiness that's going on. I never expected anyone to read it ever. So it was just kind of a way for me to get it all out and then, kind of feel better. But over the course of, I don't know how long I've had it. It's probably close to 10 years now. I've really kind of discovered that there are people out there who are reading it and, who are going through a lot of the same things, have the same challenges that I have. So it's kind of become this way to, start a dialogue about some of the things that are, very apparent in all of our lives. And, it's great to be able to have those conversations with people, because a lot of times, it is hard to talk about. Some of these things are hard to talk about. So knowing that there is somebody else out there who, is going through something similar, just, it feels very much like you're not alone. And so if I can provide that to at least one person, that's amazing. So that's been really fun. Taking pictures, it really helps that I live in Colorado. It's almost kind of sacrilege if you don't, at least every once in a while. Of course, there are moments where I just have to take mental photographs because you can't capture, the beauty that's before you in a picture. But yeah, it's awesome. And I like to do it just for myself to kind of remind myself of why I moved here and how grateful I am to be in a place that this, that's pretty. So yeah, that's kind of why I do it.
I really just want to commend you for the writing that you do with your blog, because I think just the chance for somebody to use their voice to help people know that they're not alone, to normalize a thing that's hard to deal with. I think it's so huge. And though you talk about writing as a way to help kind of process and deal with things, makes me think back to last week's show when Tim Backus was talking about doing that himself. And I feel like that is a strategy that more people should try, actually, honestly. Like just try to write, to journal, to get your thoughts out. I think I mentioned last week too that my daughter does that, and she's just finishing 4th grade, and it's really helpful for her. She sleeps better at night if she takes the time to do the journaling before her head hits the pillow.
Oh, I love that.
So yeah, it's really great stuff.
Yeah.
How old is your daughter that does that?
Yeah, she'll be turning 10 in August.
Okay, that's what I thought. She was about 10. That's amazing. I don't.
To have that forethought to do that, that's so incredible. Yeah.
Smart kid.
Yeah.
Well, I think we touched on it tiny bit, but we love to talk about origin stories here on when we have guests on. Hey, we like your pod. So tell us more about what it's like now that you are in Colorado, being a Packer fan in Broncos territory.
That's such a good question. Yeah. And it's funny too, because my mom's such a huge Broncos fan. So her and my dad kind of have a similar sports relationship that Mike and I do. He's the biggest New England fan. So it's so fun to kind of, egg one another on in our respective sports fandoms. But it's so interesting. I thought when I moved out here that I would be kind of the lone wolf. But you would be surprised at how many people from Wisconsin are out in Colorado. It seems like I'm always running into somebody. Like the other day I was hiking and I ran into a guy with a Packers hat, and we struck up a conversation, and he lived in Oak Creek, which was where I lived when I went to college. So it's a very small world. Tons of incredible Packers bars. Some of the greatest Packers memories that I have are, getting beer tossed all over me at, championship games, and, really like clinchers for, the fans just going crazy. But yeah, it's great. I am, sad that I don't get to make it up to Lambeau as often as I would be able to if I lived back in Wisconsin. But, I still feel that like with the online community that we have, it is very much a piece of home, and it's great to be reminded of that and to know that there's this massive group of people who, are there and just have that same passion as you, and you can shoot the just talk wildly about the games and players, and it's so fun. So I feel like I'm in a way not really even a part of it. Like I'm still connected.
Packers fans just really are everywhere, and there's a really great Packers fan group here in Cincinnati that like meets at a bar. It's definitely a Packers bar at this point. And it's funny because anytime I see Packers gear on somebody else, of course I'll stop and talk to them. But when I'm in Wisconsin, it's like I have to stop myself from doing that because, like, okay, everybody loves the Packers. Like, okay,
oh my God, I did that. So when we were in Milwaukee, the first time we were in the airport, and I was like, oh my God, he has a Brewers hat on. Oh my God, he has a Packers shirt on. I was like, okay, I'm going to do that for like the first 5 people that I see, and then finally remember that I'm in Wisconsin, and that's just going to be a thing.
Totally.
That's hilarious. I love the way you said that about having the online community when you're out of town, and to be able to be part of the Wisconsin community. I mean, I've thought about it in terms of being a Packer fan, but yeah, you're right. It is a little bit, if you're from Wisconsin, all are, and we're all not there anymore.
Yeah.
Us 3 at least. That it really is, because it, the culture comes through, and the accents when you're talking, all of that. And it just really does. It makes you feel like you're home a little bit. That's cool. I love that perspective. And that's funny about, when I see somebody with a Packer hat or out here, it's like, oh, you're a Packer, get all giddy about it, right? I could see myself doing that in Wisconsin. Oh, yeah. Oh, Packer house. Wow. That's so cute. I love it. Well, so segue to that, which is our final question, is about our beloved NFL and Packer online community. And more broadly, if you want to talk Brewers, that's totally fine with us, or baseball, because we're not only about football, and on our podcast, we like to spread out a little bit. But hey, so one thing you love the most, and maybe one thing you would change if you had the power to, about the online
Oh,
community. I know it's
man.
loaded.
That's, oh gosh, there's so many things that I love.
Aw.
I think just honestly the relationships that I've been able to build, and I've met a lot of people just through Twitter that have become really, really good friends. And I think that's just, it's wild to me that that's a thing. But it's just, it's so great. It's just a very special, unique place. And I think sports are a way to really bridge that gap and to bring people together. And I think that's why, people love sports so much, is it transcends the actual game that you're a fan of, and goes beyond that into, the community and the people. And I think that's what I love the most. And, especially now when, there's so much uneasiness and heaviness and sadness that's very much apparent. It can be a way to come together and kind of just have that support system and that solidarity. And I think that's leaps and bounds, just so powerful. So that's definitely the thing that I love the most. The thing that I love the least would probably be, both Packers and Brewers. The communities are just fantastic. I love everybody. However, I feel, and this goes probably across the board with all sports fandoms, but I've noticed that with Wisconsin's fans, especially, they are either very confident and sure of their teams, or they're just a bunch of negative Nancy's, and at the drop of the first imperfect thing, they hit that panic button hard. So sometimes I just would like to give them a hug and say, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay, just take a breath, and we're gonna be okay. So I think that's one thing that if I could change, I would. But
Yeah.
Speaking of drops and panicking, that really speaks to this week with news from the OTAs of Christian Watson dropping some passes. It's like people are like, oh, he's a bust. It's terrible. What did we do? We missed a pick. It's OTAs.
It's OTAs.
First of all, Aaron Rodgers isn't even there. We can just take a breath and not worry about it. I won't say which podcast I was listening to earlier today, but there was definitely one that I really enjoy with people who I very much respect.
Uh-huh.
And at least one of the people on the podcast was freaking out about it. I'm like, hey, no, it's okay.
All right.
It's okay.
I love that. Well, yeah, so what you're talking about kind of seems like maybe the extremes. It's either find the balance, maybe. Just
right?
find
Yeah.
happy. Yeah, it is hard though. I'm guilty of that. I probably don't say much on Twitter, but just feeling it.
Yeah.
I'm still deeply hurt
Uh-huh.
over the last game we played, and I'm not going to get over it
Right.
until we start playing again. And I'm
Yeah.
just I don't express it maybe, but yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yes.
My dad has to remind me sometimes that I don't need to be so emotionally invested in the outcome of the games. My dad has much more than once texted me Matt, RELAX. It's you're right, Dad. You're right.
It's really true.
But that's what I love too, is that it is really a testament to how passionate people are, and that's nothing to be to scoff at. I think that's a great attribute and speaks to just how lucky we are as Wisconsin sports fans to have teams across the board that are just so incredible. So that's awesome.
Fun. Yeah, it's fun, and fans who are fun, who really enjoy it. So yeah, there's just that other side of being really excited and enthusiastic about your team, and then just falling really hard when it goes down. So yeah, it's an interesting point, and I just love that question because sometimes answers are somewhat similar, but they're never exactly the same, and everyone has their different little fingerprint that they put on this. And so I think we're going to keep asking this question, right, Maddie?
I love it.
Good one.
I want to add a thing real quickly here is Wendi, the way you talked about how that is a positive thing, can be seen as a good thing, like the passion of the fans, is such a good example of why I love you so much, because like presence in the community, and I really, somebody who tries to be as well. Like I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you. Oh,
Ditto.
thank you. I
Ditto
appreciate
to
that,
that.
guys.
Yeah, ditto. And also we just really appreciate that you're spending a little time with us.
Mhm.
And and our audience, who are listening, who can get to know you a little bit better. And, one person at a time, 1 week at a time, get to know those who are in our community. So anyone who wants to be on our podcast is welcome. Just DM us if you want to join us and tell us your story, or just chat with us. Maybe you don't think your story's that interesting, but I bet it is. And we'll draw it out of you, right, Maddie? So we appreciate your time, and we love getting to know you a little bit better. And we feel like our community is stronger when we do these things, whether it's a super fan. What do we call a super fan, right? Or a fan, or a content creator. You don't have to be a content creator to be a fan, right? Since we all have content, we all have something to offer. And so everyone's welcome here to listen or to participate on our podcast live, which would be, our pleasure to have you. So we feel like we want a strong community, and we want to hold together and be able to hold each other's hands when things don't go the way we want them.
Yeah.
Remember Jamie last season, when Jamie was scheduled to do a post-game podcast with us, and we were so sad. I don't even think we went live, did we, Maddie? We
were planning to go live after the playoff game where the Packers lost, and Jamie was going to be our guest on it. We were all like excited for it, because we all figured we're going to win this game. We'll just move on to the next round, get to the game. And of course, it didn't go that way. So it was Don and Jamie and me in this space, and we were like, we need to process together. We need to cry it out. A whole lot. This is too heavy right now.
Heavy. It was so heavy. Well, we love to our second section of our podcast. We really love, and I think our audience appreciates, is our super superlatives, or our signature superlatives. Wendi, and I understand that you brought some superlatives to share with us this week.
I did. Yeah.
Let's hear them.
All right. So my first one is, I have to give the biggest shout out to the Brewers, who at the time that I wrote this, they were 32-18. But I believe they're 30. I think they lost the last two. So they're 32-20, maybe. But they are still off to their best 52 game start in franchise history, which is incredible. Seems like the last 3 years, they've just gotten consecutively better and better. So it's so fun to watch them. It's probably, and I probably say this every year, but I'm going to say it again. This group of guys is just so fun. The chemistry is amazing. They just kind of remind you why this game is so enjoyable, and, put the fun in baseball, which I really appreciate as a fan. Josh Hader is also breaking records left and right. He, the other night, was the 7th pitcher in franchise history to save both games in a doubleheader. So they played the Cubs, and he played both games, got the save for both, which was incredible. The last person to do that, fun fact, was Jim Henderson. He did that in 2013, and it also happened at Wrigley Field. So it might be a Cubs thing. I don't know. Yeah. If it is a Cubs thing, I like it even more, because that's just fantastic. But yeah, no, they're doing great. Despite they do have quite a few injuries right now, but they're still kicking butt, and it's fun to see. I can't wait to see what they do next. The second one that I have is a fun one. I saw this the other day. So there was a viral video going around of a little girl who went through the Culver's drive-thru, and she met Giannis. Giannis was right behind them in the drive-thru, and It was the most adorable thing. It was just so pure. This little girl was talking to her mom, and she's basically like, who did we just see? And she was like, Giannis is right behind us. And so Giannis actually met them. And, you know, how can you not love Giannis? Like, he's so sweet. He's the best.
Yeah.
So shout out to Culvers and Giannis for making that little girl's probably life.
Oh, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
There's
super
few
cute.
more likable sports figures out there right now than that guy. I mean, he's amazing.
Right? Oh my gosh.
So likable. Yeah.
So likable. Yeah. He's just, and you know, I love when that happens too, when these larger than life athletes are not only incredible at, you know, their respective sports, but they're also good human beings. Like that's just, it's the best. It's the best.
It's everything. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And my last one, and this one is primarily for Mike. The Celtics, they made it to the NBA Finals. This was the last time, or I think the last time that they made it was 10 years ago. I may be wrong on that. But yeah, so I'm cheering for the Celtics. I had always said that the winner of the Celtics-Bucks series was going to go to the finals.
Right.
Unfortunately, it was not the Bucks. But now I get to cheer on the Celtics, and hopefully we have a very happy house if that happens. So
yeah, I had a similar experience with the Bengals, you know, this last season.
Yeah.
Being related by marriage to a lot of really wonderful people who are Bengals fans. I got to kind of get on board with their excitement, and you know, it's just a lot. It's just really cool here. So that's really nice to have that sort of like, you know, parachute into different, like, you know, trying to jump on for a minute when things don't go the way that you want them to for your own team. So experience.
Yeah, you know what? And I agree. I was kind of rooting for the Celtics after that too. Not right away, you know, but I was like, okay, Celtics, let's go. You know, let's do it. And then, yeah, it just made me feel better about everything.
Yeah.
They deserved it. That was such a hard fought.
It was.
Oh,
really
serious. I mean, man.
Yep.
We had such a great year last year, but it was still pretty good.
Yes.
This year it was very exciting.
Yeah.
I love that. Those are great superlatives. Wendi, Maddie, how about you? You have any superlatives for us this week?
Yeah, just one. You know, I was trying to go with fewer this week since we wanted to make sure that Wendi had plenty of time to talk about hers. So the one that I have is, I think it was Sunday's episode of Ryan Schlipp show, you know, Packernet podcast. And it was, so the thing about Ryan, if you listen to his show, right, is that he has like two things that he specializes in. One is like really well thought out, like analytical, using, you know, data to back up a point. So like being really good at like making an argument. The other one is being really good at ranting. So when these two things come together, those are his best episodes and his like well-informed rants. Because when he has just one of the other, it's good, of course, but like that's, you know, it's like synergy of when they come together. So he was talking about like it was kind of a reaction to what people had been saying about how like you don't need to establish the run, and some people think you do need to establish the run in a football game. And he got into it like the last couple of Packer seasons, how successful they were in times when they were able to establish the run versus times when it was mostly like throwing through the air to try to win. Yeah. It was remarkable. And it just really backed up the point that like, yeah, you have to run the ball well to set up everything else, like literally everything else. So the way how he walked through it, the way how he like brought it all to a conclusion at the end, it was a masterclass. It was amazing. I clipped just the end part, like his like kind of closing statement, as it kind of turned out to be, and I had shared that on my you know, on Twitter, and it's worth checking out if anybody hasn't seen that. Like just go back, like just, you know, listen to the clip that I put on there. It's spectacular. So that was my only superlative for the week. I guess I'd say best argument, best point. Let's say best argument with best argument.
Yeah. And even when I didn't know, let's put it this way, even when I knew less about football than I do now, which is very little, I would always remember people yelling, "Run the ball!" in frustration, you know, my family or friends or whoever was, or whatever, just run the ball, you know, stop trying to get it through the, So I remember that when you posted that, Maddie, I was like, Yes, that makes total sense. Strategic, as far as a strategy goes, you can't overlook that at
Yeah.
all. And I think it's really going to show up this year, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it has to.
Yeah, it better.
No, options list for the first half of the season while the receivers are getting settled in. I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
But
Especially, yeah.
when you put that on of like people like yelling, run the ball, where it sounds like, well, okay, that might not be like a well-informed opinion. Like that's just people
Right.
who are frustrated, and maybe had a few too many at the stadium. But like, no,
Right.
it's backed up now. We've seen the
Right.
data for it. So no, it was great.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, awesome, Ryan Schlipp. We like that. So
So what
I
do you
have
got?
some superlatives this week. You all know, if you've been listening every week, that I'm very interested in law, and this might be a little dry, so I'll try to pop through this so it's not totally a snore fest. But I think it's actually going to be like it's like novel worthy stuff here. So okay, so first one is Gruden 1, NFL 0. So you may not appreciate Jon Gruden for some of the things he's done, and I agree with you on that. However, he was wronged from a legal standpoint. So the judge ruled against the NFL for Jon Gruden, who is, of course, the Las Vegas Raiders coach, who was asked to leave abruptly last season in the middle of the season. And so they are setting up for trial. And of course, the NFL wanted to dismiss and arbitrate and all those things, and they lost both motions. There's nothing in the contract that requires them to arbitrate and keep it all silent, keep it all quiet. So this is an interesting plot. I've talked about it before. It's intriguing. And the reason it's especially intriguing, not just on its own, but because it ties into some of these other things that are going on, such as with Snyder and the Washington Commanders. It's like a house of cards that are hopefully going to come down in a good way, so that there's more transparency into what's happening behind the scenes in the NFL. That should be more transparent. So Gruden is contending to prove that the National Football League leaked emails, which is what led to his being asked to leave, and that it was a conspiracy. That's so cool. I just think that's really interesting. And it seems like it's the case. I've been reading a lot about this. So many think this was done by the NFL to shine the spotlight away from the larger issues regarding sexual assault and other things that were going on at the NFL and with the Washington team Commanders, both, which are also separate. So there are many lawsuits that are that's why I say it's a house of cards. It's not just one or two. So it's a complicated, hot mess. It's a soap opera. It's a soap opera. So I'm interested. I'm all for that. But it's what the NFL wants, so that the general public, would look away from what was really going on. So let's all crucify Jon Gruden. Okay, fine. But let's not stop there, because that was just kind of done to take the spotlight off of what was already being alleged and hidden and swept under the rug. So meanwhile, the House Committee on Oversight and Reform has announced that it will finally hold a hearing on June 22nd. I'm not holding my breath on anything happening there, but it's a step, and the community has requested personal testimony from Goodell and Snyder. So they're trying to get out of it, but we'll see. So also, meanwhile, all of a sudden, and it's been kept really quiet, the Raiders president, Dan Ventrell, has quietly and somewhat mysteriously left the team. So the Raiders, that would be like Mark Murphy, just, well, where'd he go? So that's kind of weird, because he's probably got some information about how this all went down. So it's pretty fantastical in a way. It's like you can't make this stuff up. Kind of worried about our Devontae Adams, who kind of joined an organization that's embroiled in all this stuff. But it's nothing about the players. It's the management and all that. But still, the organization. It makes me appreciate having hopefully a clean organization, right, above the board. But hopefully they'll get it all straightened out, and maybe they'll get all of it out in the open, which is what I want, is just some transparent some transparency. So the NFL is in multiple legal messes, and this is aside from Deshaun Watson and all that other stuff. So there's just so much legally going on. And so as I looked into this, I did come upon a new podcast that I wasn't aware of, and it's a sports law podcast.
Ooh.
Yeah, and it's called Conduct Detrimental, which is a legal expression. ConductDetrimental.com. And the links, of course, to everything that we discussed today will be in our description. But so Dan Wallach, who's an attorney and who has that podcast with some other attorneys, put together an argument already advanced by the league in defending itself against the Jon Gruden lawsuit and how it could undermine some of the defenses the league plans to make in the Brian Flores case.
Wow.
Right? Okay. So it was a lot for me to write this all down. Like, wow. But yeah, so what they do in one case can affect the other. I mean, talk about multi-dimensional chess playing with their legal team. Yeah, it's pretty, and I think, I don't know, for me personally, I think as a fan, it's important to know what you're supporting. You're supporting the NFL, right? So to me, it's important. It may, if you're listening to this, you might be like, what is she talking about? Trust me, there's going to be multiple books written about this and probably some movies, but it is starting to come down, and I've been waiting for this. Matt probably knows that. So yeah, that's the update on the NFL law stuff. I do still intend to have an attorney that we can interview here to help us with some of these questions. Yeah, I've got a couple that I've been chatting with, but every time I start making headway with that, then a little more sprinkle of something else happens. It's gotten so complicated. And I just feel like maybe even listeners might, and maybe, if you're listening to this, you might be interested in letting us know, like maybe just a basic law kind of NFL law kind of primer would be a good place to start and then go from there, because it's pretty complicated, but it's not, let's put it this way. The NFL wants you to think it's too complicated for you to understand. Right? Because it's not that complicated, because I can understand it. You can understand it. So that's 1, 2, 3 maybe of my superlatives. And one quick one, I did come across another cool podcast. I've been sharing podcasts this summer that are kind of fun summer reads, so to speak. And this one's Wrongful Convictions podcast. And this is one particular episode is about the Daniel Villegas false confession. And it's, if you're not from, and this has nothing to do with NFL, everything to do with the American justice system and people that are sometimes falsely accused and actually imprisoned. And he was released. And what a story, what a great summer read that actually can really enrich your life and make you more aware as a citizen. So that's my other superlative. So yeah, I've got a few that I'm saving for next week, but I know I get really fired up about it. So much. It's just so much. But so, hey, Maddie, Wendi, any bonus final thoughts? And Maddie, you're going to tell us where we can find Wendi and all that jazz.
Yeah, Wendi, do you have any thoughts first? I have a thing or two I was going to say, but I want you to go first.
Well, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for having me on. It's been a blast. I've listened to this pod for a minute, and I love what you do. I love how you bring just the, Wisconsin sports community together and introduce people and just have conversations that, go beyond sports, which is really, really cool. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. It's been super duper. Don, so I was going to say, going back to your first kind of like web of superlatives about the NFL legal stuff, I love when you talk about that, because when you see those things come across like a Twitter timeline, it's like, I'm not going to go and read like this whole article about it. Like I should inform myself because it's important things that are happening, and at a bigger level than like what's happening with the Packers. So it's important to be aware of that stuff. So when you talk about it, like one, it makes it sound really intriguing and it makes me want to go like learn more about it. And two, it's just going to share that information. So I really appreciate it when you get into that kind of stuff. And it just sounds so fascinating. So solid superlatives, Don, as always. All right, guys. So I want to talk about Nebels for a minute. All right.
Yeah, let's talk about Nebels.
Got to like take a breath. Got to collect myself here. So
yeah,
one of my favorite podcasts, former because it's not happening anymore, not exactly like it was the Unknown Packers podcast. So hopefully a lot of people listening to this had heard that back when Bryce Christensen, Niebels, and Ken Engels were still making it. Eventually, the group did split up for various reasons, but when it was still happening, I would interact with all of them a lot, but especially Niebels, because he was a very like interactive guy, very friendly guy, and he was always so kind. And like when I started to interact with him, that was when I was fairly new in like Packers Twitter and like new to the community. And he was always very like welcoming and very just a really friendly guy, And one of my favorite stories about him was he had taken a picture that he posted on Twitter of him with a beer in this kind of a glass. This is a Unknown Packers podcast, or like a snifter, basically. I don't know if you can see that very well. Get better background on.
Right.
So I just made a comment like, well, that's a classy looking glass, man. That looks great. And he's like, want one? I'll send you one. Just like out of nowhere. Like just,
Aww.
He's willing to just like send me this glass that he has. I think it's like another copy of it, it's like swag from their show. But like just like go and do that. And I was like, oh, can I pay you back for shipping? He's like, no, don't worry about it, man. Like, who does that?
That's
He's
so
an amazing
nice.
guy,
Yeah.
So that's just one like small example of just like kind of like generous, kind person he was, always insightful, always interesting, funny guy too, for that matter. When Don told me actually earlier tonight, just before we started that Niebels has passed, I had to take a minute, I was a little late coming to the show because I just needed a few minutes to collect myself. And I know that a lot of people, are very sad to hear the news. Definitely a very beloved person in our community. So, to his family, our hearts are with you. There is a GoFundMe that his family posted. So like I'm sure it'll be for a long time. The last post, on his Twitter is a link to the GoFundMe for that and more information. So, check that out, see what you can do to help the family out. And like just share your stories about how great a person he was on Twitter. Let the people know how much you love this man.
Yeah, and that we're thinking about Niebels and his family, especially, and dear friends, the close friends that he had, and he definitely was a presence and a voice in our community, and it was really hard news to take. Obviously, young man with a family, with kids, wife, it's just too much to process, especially like you said, man, and just to hear it right like that, it's so in black and white, basically, because we're on Twitter, right, with us, where we're just reading this, we're not getting a personal phone call or anything, and it's pretty tough, man. And we loved Niebels, and he had the best like little nickname on the planet. His name was Neil, and just a really sweet guy. And Wendi, I know you had interactions with him and knew him as well. And so
his impact is gonna last forever. He just was such a presence. And Matt, like you said, you said it perfectly. He was so generous and the kind of person that I was very lucky enough to even know in the small capacity that I did. But I'm grateful for that, and my heart goes out to his family right now. I can't imagine what they're going through.
Yeah, it's rough. I guess one last thing I'd say about Niebels too, before we kind of like wrap things up here, is just that the way how you knew from the get-go that Niebels was a good dude is that anybody who friend of the show Ellis would spar with verbally, like vocally, or not, I guess in print, would spar with in comment sections of things. They're a good person, because who does that with Aaron? People like Jimmy and Todd, of course. You got like Ryan Schlipp, who we mentioned today, JJ Leahy, who very, very decent guy. People like that. It's like if Aaron's going to take the time to like have that kind of like bust your chops relationship with you, then you're a good person for sure.
Right.
And Niebels was that.
Right.
Any last thoughts on Niebels before we get to the sort of wrap up here?
Yeah, just that's a good point. And his interactions with Aaron were just classic. And thankfully we can reread those and keep his memory alive, because those things will be there indefinitely, I shall say. I'm not gonna say forever, but Yeah, so Nebels, we're going to miss you, and Nebels family. We're thinking about you, and we're dedicating our little show to you tonight for what it's worth. And we're definitely going to be sharing in the comment in the show description here that link to the memorial for Nebels and his family.
All right. Well, friends, make sure you're following Wendi Hansen on Twitter. That's at WendiLuhu3. So Wendi is with an I. So WENDI. And then Luhu is like you think, LOOHOO. And then the 3. Don't forget the 3. And of course, you'll find our show description for everyone we mentioned. So please check it out. Wendi is a super fan, and we'd love to have a chance to interview you if you're a subscriber and a football fan. So our DMs are open at Hey We Like Your Pod, at Hey WLYP on all the social platforms. We'd love to hear from you or someone you'd like to nominate to be a guest on our podcast this year. Yes, that's right. Nominate. If you have a friend you think would be good, please nominate them. We'd love to hear about it. So anyhow, when you subscribe to our podcast, you help us spread the love in our community. And by sharing our podcast with your friends and family, you help the community and those who need positive influences and a little football fun in their lives.
Yes, Maddie, thank you so much. And that's right. And we love you. We're so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and to have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL. We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod. And we look forward to seeing you next week on
Hey, we like your pod.
Oh, and Wendi, I forgot to ask you about the Wendi Luhu.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.